Hello everybody. Hope you are enjoying your weekend. Welcome to another boring James video. This video I'm going to talk about Acronis 2021 has been announced on their website, and I'm starting to see YouTube videos popping up with reviews on the latest revision of the software. So the 2021 version's out, and I just thought I'd talk a little bit about, I've talked about it in some of my other videos, but I'm going to talk a little bit about how it should be the norm for people to do drive imaging. Whether you're imaging or cloning, it should be the norm for people. It's an inexpensive way to back up data. Backing up your files to a NAS is great, but backing up entire partitions is even better. With so many different pieces of software people use these days, and a lot of it not being portable software, meaning all your settings, and like it's nice to save, to be able to install a piece of software and just like, hey, I have a preferences file or an INI file backed up somewhere. I just throw it in there. The executable references that, and everything's back the way I like it. But you have, software that gets installed. It'll keep settings in somewhere in app data folder or tucked away in your user folder somewhere. Sometimes it'll be in your documents folder. Some of the settings will be in the registry. So it's just easier, instead of just backing up files, backing up entire drives and backing up entire partitions. I've been harping on people to do that for, I don't know, like 2 decades now, since the days of Norton Ghost or Symantec Ghost, whatever you want to call it. I'll probably talk more about Symantec in my senseless rambling, because I was going to go over some there's many imaging softwares out there, but I'm just going to talk about some of the ones that I have experience with. And there's lots of data out there with different softwares that other people have experience with, so this is just mine. So I have some said software queued up here in my browser here. So yeah, Acronis is now pimping 2021, and my thoughts on Acronis are, it's really good software in the form of how I use it. Now, I don't like installing huge suites of software that have a big install footprint. And I don't mean just taking a large amount of storage space. I mean running background processes, eating up lots of RAM, utilizing even worse, utilizing network resources to phone home all the time and check for this and check for that, and filtering everything you do on your computer with whether it's like a network filter or a malware filter or all these protections and stuff like that. The more of that you add to your computer, in my opinion, unless it's really specific to you, I say to avoid that at all costs. Like when computers were slower back in the old days I always talk about the old days, I'm getting old. when we had spinning discs and everyone was on a mechanical drive, all right, it might have made a little sense to have some stuff start up with the system. It's loading memory, so when you hit it, it loads fast. But finding things on storage with NAND memory to load into DRAM is not a problem anymore. I don't like the idea of having unnecessary processes starting up, whether that be from your startup, your OS's startup area, or your services. I think it gets out of hand if you don't keep a cap on it. And it also makes troubleshooting issues harder when you have a multitude of third-party services running in the background, all these things starting up, and when something goes wrong, now you have all these things to sift through. So I've said it a million times on my channel, in all my nerd ramblings, less is more. Like, I don't know if there's anybody as old as me and they used XP, and part of the fun of running a clean XP system was setting as many background services that you're not utilizing to either manual, or I wish they had a system where triggering services was more reliable. Basically, not having a service on automatic. Now, I understand that's a slippery slope. You don't want to go disabling things that you're going to need. You got to know what you're doing. But for me, every time a new piece of software is installed, I like to see what is it adding as a startup item? What services is it adding? How many processes are running? For example, MSI Command Center, that ran, I don't know, 5 or 6 processes. So I made notes. I'm like, what process for the guts of the software, for what I want to use out of it to work? How many of these processes do I need to have running, and how many can I eliminate? So I would make notes and do that. I found like I only need one of those six services starting with Windows, and that's what I do. And if I wanted to use another part of this software, that's fine. You go in there and you start up the service. You know, if you want to make life easy, just let the software that installs on your computer do whatever it wants. Let it run whatever it wants. And I envy people who are free of mind to do that. But for some of us who got a little bit of OCD and you can't do that, yeah, everything that gets installed, I will let's go to my laptop for a second. Let's see if I can bring it up. Alright, so yeah, so I was watching a little bit of some comedy before, but what I'll do is, if I install a piece of software, I will let's see if did it add a service. So for example, I've tested Macrium on this guy, and you know, I'm not utilizing the software enough to need that service running in the background. I don't need the Macrium service running all the time. I'll use Macrium when I need it. I back up my system. I do my imaging outside of the OS. I don't prefer to do it while the operating system is loaded up into memory. A lot of people do. That's fine. As long as people do it, as long as they're happy doing it the way they want to do it, that's fine. I prefer to do things outside of the OS. Like maybe at work, at your job, you'll and this goes for a lot of IT guys who are probably listening to this. You're constantly doing stuff that you normally wouldn't do back in the old days on your own computer at work. For example, you would use software within Windows to flash the BIOS at work. You could do that at home too, but you're less likely to, because, more could go wrong when you're in the operating system. Because less is more, right? There's more going on when the operating system's loaded. What could go wrong flashing a BIOS in Windows? A lot, right? So that's my point on that, if that made any sense. So yeah, the first thing I'll do if I install some new software, I'll eliminate extra if it added a start menu item here, if it created links that I think are like hard to find, maybe I'll save some of those, but I'll remove it from here if I don't need it from here. And you'd find that stuff in your various user folders for start menu programs and stuff, and you could just delete that out of there. But anything you want to keep, just keep it. So yeah, I'd clean that out of there. Disable any services you know you're not going to need, and also do go to your task manager, and whatever it adds here, if you don't need it starting up all the time, it doesn't need to be there. Disable that, knock that out too, and you can always, trial and error. Oh, no, I changed my mind. I want that running again. Enable it again. You wanted it to start up, but if you let every piece of software you install on your computer do what it wants and run what it wants, you're asking for trouble down the road. It's better to stay on top of it, so when you have issues later, it's easier to troubleshoot. And then when you find out what the issue is, you can help somebody else and help them knock it out. So let's minimize my my connection to my laptop, and let's look at some of these imaging tools that I've messed with before. So first up, what I started talking about was Acronis. I've been using Acronis since the early 2000s, and I've only installed it, I currently don't have it installed, but I own 2020. I got it. You're gonna love this, people who've watched my channel. I got it with a great discount through Carrie Holzman's YouTube channel, because he also likes using Acronis, and I love Acronis. But Acronis has a big footprint, and people have complained about it botching their computers. I don't know about that, and I can't comment on that because I rarely install it on my computer, and if I do, it's for the sole purpose of creating a WinPE or WinRE bootable media. And WinPE, WinRE, whatever you want to call it. You want to call it pre-installation environment, you want to call it the recovery environment, who cares what it's called? They're similar enough. It's the Windows environment outside of Windows, where as long as it gets the engine running that lets you clone or image or restore an image to storage, that's all I care about. And first, my older computer, my laptop, I still use an ISO file I created, a bootable media that I created off of Acronis TrueImage 2013, because it's an old chipset, and all the support in that version of Acronis is there. So as time passed, and AHCI and SATA became things of the past, and we moved on to M.2 and the NVMe protocol. Those older imaging tools, they don't know what this is. They don't know what the new chipsets are. They don't know the software predates the hardware, so it has no idea what it is. You go ahead and try to install Windows 7 on a computer that has NVMe storage and USB 3 controllers, and you're gonna have to do some magician work, which I've had to do it at one of my former jobs to get that installed. You're gonna have to slipstream USB 3 drivers into the installer. You're gonna have to stick NVMe drivers in there. You're gonna have to teach Windows 7 how to work with modern hardware. So, to make it easier for me, I said, you know what? I know I'm having money problems now, but it really wasn't a bad price. I think I paid like $25 to get Acronis 2020. Now, I know I'm talking about 2021 just came out, but 2020 is the one that I have. And I don't need to get 2021, and I'll tell you why. Because the only reason why I got the new version is I don't have to deal with the issue of it supports NVMe drives. It sees them. I can image them, backing up, restoring. That's all I needed. So if you ever wanted to try Acronis, you could go to the various YouTube channels that have done, and even Carrie Holtzman might do another. He's done a lot. He's worked with them a lot. So every year he seems to have a chat with one of their representatives. So who knows if he's going to do it again this year? But I really have had good experiences with Acronis. Like I said, I don't run it on my operating system. So what I do when I had my 2013 version of Acronis, and I think I also with a 2016 version of Acronis, I did install it just to produce the WinPE or the WinRE version of the bootable media. Because if you have an account with Acronis, and that's the nice thing, you would log into your account, and whatever product you've paid for, they keep a history of that. And they have, through your account, you're able to download bootable media, but it will be a Linux version of that bootable media. So the catch is, the Linux bootable media might not perform your operation as fast as the WinRE or as the Windows media will. And that could differ from everybody, but you know, that's just my experience of as far as the only reason why I would install it. I don't want the real-time. Really, Windows 10, Windows Defender is good enough, and to really keep your computer from getting hit by malware, you have to use your brain. I'm sorry, but no software is going to keep you from getting an infection or something going wrong. If you're a bumbling fool that clicks everything in your email, downloads every attachment, runs every executable, if you don't know what you're doing, man, you better get familiar with MD5s and checksums and all that stuff, and you got to pay attention to what you're doing. But try to get back on track here. I tend to go off the rails. So I fully recommend Acronis, and like I was saying, if you just go to one of those YouTube channels that are doing a review, they usually have an affiliate link where you could get it at a discount. And if you wanted to try it, if you could get this software for under $50, it's just what a lifesaver. I've never had an Acronis image restore go poorly. And one of the beautiful things about Acronis, and I know other imaging softwares have caught up, is on the fly partition ratio adjustment. Like for example, if you had a 500 gig hard drive and you had it partitioned to twice for C and a D, and they were both like, I'm just rounding, 250 gigs each, and then you upgrade to a 1 terabyte drive, and you clone your 500 to your 1 terabyte drive, it's going to automatically inflate those partitions to match the same ratio as you had on your 500 gigs. So it would make 2 partitions of 500 gigs on your 1 terabyte drive, whereas you used to have 2 partitions of 250 gigs on your 500 gigahertz drive. And if you did the same operation without using switches, you can do it in Clonezilla. But in Clonezilla, there's like, I don't know, there's like a -K and a -R. There's some switches you got to use to ensure that that happens. If you just use it the normal way, because there's no graphical user interface in Clonezilla. Well, there kind of is. That's another story. That's beside the point. It's not as clean looking and it's not as simple. But if you just run Clonezilla the normal way, you're gonna have your clone to the 1 terabyte drive, but you're gonna have 500 gigs of unallocated space if you don't put the proper parameters in there. So anyway, yeah, I recommend Acronis. I think it's great. Like I said, check out the YouTube reviews that some of the guys have been doing. I like to use it outside of Windows, and if you have an account with them, like I said, you could go to your whatever product you own, and you can download the latest. You have access to the latest version of the installer, and the latest version of the bootable media. So if you find the bootable media that they offer on their website suits your needs, as far as imaging outside of Windows, like it does for me, you don't need to install the giant fat footprint of Acronis onto your computer. I think that's a beautiful thing. Less is more. I don't want, hey, remember Norton Ghost and Symantec endpoint and all that stuff? Sometimes exercising that shit from your computer, what a nightmare. I remember at one of my jobs, we were moving from Symantec to Sophos. Sophos was actually pretty nice, but you had to get Symantec off the machines, and there was like I think Symantec had to even make a custom uninstaller that I'd use, and even then, you're hoping when you're exercising Symantec from that computer, you're hoping it doesn't take that computer's soul with it, because every once in a while it didn't want to go, and if you did force it to go, it caused some kind of issue. But yeah, it's neither here nor there. That's enough bashing Symantec. It's not the topic of discussion here. But Norton Ghost, yeah, that was the old days of imaging that I was exposed to, and once I came across Acronis, I was like, well, I think this is a better solution. Thanks, Russians. I think Acronis is from the Russians, I believe. But anyway, yeah, totally think Acronis is good. But compared to the other things that I'm talking about here, Acronis is the only one, and I hate paying for software. I mean, because I'm not well off. If I was, I probably wouldn't be paying for, I still probably wouldn't want to pay for retail software. I'd probably be giving any extra money I had to people who make things like VLC or Audacity or GPU-Z, CPU-Z, all these utilities that all of us take for granted and all of us use them, and they help all of us. That's probably where the form of donations to people like that. Not to knock companies that are, selling retail products and making a living. Good for them. If it's worth it, you'll buy it. And I think this is worth it. I don't really buy a lot of things, but I have purchased Acronis a few times. It's worth it to me. So out of all this stuff that I'm going to go over, this is the one pay for one. So that's enough rambling about Acronis. So EaseUS. Now this one could be a little spooky, a little scary. I never tried their backup software until a few years ago. I really liked their partitioning tool, the EaseUS, I think it's Partition Magician or something like, what is it called? Let me see. Partition Master. Yeah, the EaseUS Partition Master software, it accomplished a lot of tasks for me, so I liked it. So I was like, hey, they make backup software too, and it's free. Let me try that out. Gave it a try. Works pretty good. And I don't know. there are it is a little sketchy with it wants you to buy the pro version of this and the pro version of that. But if you can change your shortcut link to get directly to the user interface and bypass the first executable that runs, that in turn starts the user interface if you know what you're doing. And I've tried it. Seems to work pretty good. Works well, and it's free. So if you don't have money and you want to try something that's free, I don't think this is a bad option. So you could try that to see if you like it. Or especially their partition manager. That's very good software. I found it very, very good. If you want to do some, and you know what I mean. You don't want to use gparted or something like that. You want to do something right there in Windows. I know some people use Minitool partition. I've messed with that a little bit, but I don't know. EaseUS, however they pronounce it, works fine for me. I don't have to use it that often, but it's good. So I found their total backup software and I gave it a try and it worked fine. And it's the same thing. You install it like you would Acronis, and then from within the software, that's where you create your bootable media. Now, one thing I found with EaseUS and even Macrium, which I'll briefly go over next because it's going to be a similar chat. When you produce your WinRE bootable media, WinPE, whatever you want to call it, like, I'm not going to get into the semantics of proper wording. I'm an idiot. We all know that. If you have multiple computers, try to produce your bootable media on the computer that has the most recent version of Windows on it. That's going to have, all the up-to-date, generic vague drivers for as many chipsets and hardware as possible. Try to do it on your most up-to-date chipset that you can as well. So my laptop's an old 2012 laptop. It has an ancient, old Intel chipset on it. So I think, and don't quote me on this because I could be incorrect, but I think when you build those bootable medias in some of these softwares like EaseUS and Macrium, it will use some of the drivers and resources on the machine that you're building the media on for drivers and media. Like, for example, when you download when you get the Linux bootable media for Acronis, it's usually jam-packed with all kinds of generic. It's going to work with a lot of stuff. But if I build a WinRE bootable media on my old laptop, and then I try to use it on my, my kind of modern B450 chipset and AMD system here, I'm going to run into problems. But if I create the same media from my AMD machine, my up-to-date machine, whether it's your Intel machine or your AMD machine, it's more than likely going to work fine on the older chipset. So yeah, do try to produce your bootable media on the most up-to-date, latest. You can have backward compatibility, but I don't think there's any such thing as see into the future, crystal ball, future compatibility. So yeah, do it that way. But just like Acronis, I prefer to use EaseUS. I just install it to make that bootable media. I do all my cloning, imaging outside of Windows. I boot with the bootable media. I do as much as I can outside of Windows. And like I said, anything when you install the software into your operating system, clean it out. Get those services out of there. Get those services disabled. Get those startup items out of there. Clean it up. All right. So yeah, EaseUS. I gotta admit, it's a good free utility. It's free. It does what it says it's gonna do. It's free. Your mileage may vary. I'm just talking about my experiences, but if you didn't know it was out there, it's out there as an option. And Macrium, now, I don't want to sound biased, but I think Macrium is possibly based in the United States, or at the very least based in Europe. So, sorry my Asian brothers and sisters, I trust them more than I would EaseUS. And I've tested the software, and Macrium will also throw a service onto your machine. And like I said, if you're not using it and you're not running the software on your computer and you like to do everything outside of Windows, turn that off, disable that. Get any startup items as adds to startup out of there. Just make sure when you run the software from within Windows, if you're going to use it from within Windows, make sure it's doing what you need it to do. That's all you need to do. And the only time I need to use Macrium or EaseUS or even Acronis inside Windows would be for two reasons. To create the bootable media, if you want to create a specific type of bootable media. And the other reason, and that's where I'm going to get into Clonezilla. This is a disadvantage that I found with Clonezilla, even though it's great because it's free. A disadvantage Clonezilla has, and other Clonezilla users might disagree with this because they might know something that I don't know. With these three softwares, if you have them loaded into Windows, with Acronis, EaseUS, and Macrium, you're like, oh man, there's a file on one of my old images, I want it. And with those softwares, you could start Acronis, EaseUS, and Macrium up, and you can browse to your image that you've made with those softwares. You can mount that image, and you can browse through those partition images and get the file you need. That's a nice touch. That the ability to do that is very, very convenient, and they I'm pretty sure all three of these put all of their images into one big compressed file. So it's very neat. It's just one image file. You lock that away somewhere. That's safe. Clonezilla creates a directory. Inside that directory, you'll see there's a whole bunch of different files that compromise your image. And I imagine all of them are important in one way or another. One might, one's the partition tables and all that nerdy stuff, and your partition information and data and all that stuff. You want to keep all those files intact. That's all going to be inside a directory that it creates. And to my knowledge, unless somebody else knows a way, you can't mount that directory and browse through that image and grab an individual file. But the beautiful thing about Clonezilla is it's free, and the people who keep it up to date, they're working for free. Those guys are usually passionate, so there's always an up-to-date, recent Clonezilla Live bootable media that you can get. Or Clonezilla's always being constantly updated to keep up with the times. The drawback is it looks like this, and it does kind of throw a little bit of a curveball at you, where most of these softwares, they start off with, what do you want to image? What do you want to clone? What is your source? Clonezilla first asks you, what's your destination? What's your repository? Where are you going to put it at? Then they ask you, what do you want to save? What do you want to back up? So just keep that in mind when you're going through this for the first time and you feel like you're a little confused. You're like, what am I doing? Keep that in mind. Clonezilla kind of does it in reverse. And but it's free, and it's constantly updated. That's an airplane in the background because I don't have a soundproof room. And I don't have a good mic. And you guys are familiar with that on my website. And some of you still watch my 30 or so subscribers and a few of my friends. And whoever finds this video out in YouTube land, I'm sorry about the poor quality and poorly constructed relaying of information. But yeah, that's my take on Acronis. The new version's out. It's one of the few pieces of software out there that I think is worth your money. But if you don't have money and you're going through hard times, and everybody is these days, there are some free options out there. And there are people way smarter than me that can show you how to use those. It's not that hard. I mean, I'm really stupid, and I back up I've been doing it for like 20 years. Back up my hardware regularly. Anybody can do it. If I can do it, anything I can do, you guys can do, and probably better. So yeah, that's just my overview on some of the options out there to image or clone, backup, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, there's probably another thing I wanted to say, but I'll remember it after I stop recording. Thank you for watching, everybody. I'll see you in the next video.